This is part of a program called Lake Friendly Living that is brought to you tonight by Seneca Lake Pure Waters Association. And many of you live in the Seneca Lake watershed. But what we want to emphasize and what's so wonderfully exciting about the program tonight is Lake Friendly Living is about partnerships. So when Seneca Lake Pure Waters teamed up with Seneca County Conservation District and Ontario County Soil and Water Conservation District, that was a clear reflection of how important it is to be partners as lake friendly living entities. And you guys now, by joining this webinar and learning about a specific practice, rain barrel installation and use, is a huge step forward to be lake friendly living. And I'm sure one that is part of what you're already doing. So tonight, in the next few minutes, I'm just going to put it into context of what lake friendly living means, particularly for the programs that are out there. You don't necessarily need to be in the Seneca Lake watershed. We'll talk a little bit about that. And we're going to give you definitely access to other resources to learn more. And Elena's going to spend wonderful time and material on specific rain barrels, but also other techniques around being lake friendly. So with that, Elena, if you could move to the next slide. So I think we all understand what it means to be a part of a watershed. I'm not sure if it's moving there, Elena. There we go. A watershed is basically an area of land that we live in where runoff, whether it's from rain or even snow melt, moves eventually through streams and creeks and other aspects into a body of water. And in our case, we're talking about the Finger Lakes. We're talking about all of the Finger Lakes. What you're seeing here is Seneca Lake watershed. And I'm sure many of you on this webinar live in one of these counties. So it's not just whether you live on the lake or whether you live in Seneca County or Ontario County, you could live anywhere in the Seneca Lake watershed. And there are watersheds around Canandaigua Lake, Keuka Lake, Cayuga Lake, Owasco, all of the Finger Lakes. So it's really important to understand that you as a resident have a role in not just enjoying the lakes, but in what it means to be a part of the watershed. And just if you can click, Elena, really what's critical is not just the enjoyment, but the importance of the water quality of our lakes, because over 300,000 residents in several Finger Lakes rely on our lakes for drinking water. That's really critical. So we're enjoying our lake, activities, but we're also really needing it for day-to-day, hydration. So if you want to move on, Elena, I think what's also pressing for us to understand is that the watersheds and the lakes specifically are changing. And you guys have all experienced this in one form or another. We've got huge, intense rainfall that results in very intensive flooding. The picture on the right there is literally my road outside my house with that Lodi flood. No one could leave. We had 11 inches of rain in 4 hours. The whole area was devastated. That's not a one-off. That's not the 1 in 100 years anymore. That's happening more, and that's affecting what moves into our lakes. It's certainly affecting our neighborhoods, and it's affecting what moves into our lakes. We also, from the standpoint of what's moving into our lakes from runoff, creating what we are starting to see season 4 is those harmful algae blooms. They're becoming more pronounced, they're becoming more prevalent. So these are the things that we note, we monitor, we need to understand. And that's why what we do, and you can move to the next slide, Elena, what we do around our home can and does make a difference. And we call it lake friendly living. And I want to say and emphasize, there's lots of efforts at the agriculture level, at the commercial level. Tonight, what we're really focused on is the residential level, because we all have a part in doing something that can protect our lakes. And so that's what we call lake friendly living. If you want to move on to that, Elena. And really what the foundation of lake friendly living is to residents, we say, hey, can you take the pledge? This is you might say, a call to action by many of the lake associations throughout the Finger Lakes. Take the pledge to do really simple things around your home that can help in 3 key ways. They can help eliminate pollutants, such as hazardous waste materials, fertilizers that eventually make their way into the lake. They can help minimize runoff. The way you use water, your not just your rain barrels, but your rain gardens that can absorb more runoff. And then the other part, which we're going to talk about tonight, is the capture and infiltrate, and that's what a rain barrel does. It's capturing that water and filtering it out so you can use it before any types of contaminants and all reach the lake. And we'll talk more about specifically what's in that rainwater. And then there are other advanced practices, which are for, you know, I would even say rain barrel installations and advanced practice, but these are things you can really look at around your home that might require a little more landscaping projects, a little more investment. Not so easy and simple on a day-to-day basis, but something you might want to think about in a seasonal basis and implement in the longer term. So from a standpoint of starting with your pledge, it's about saying, I'm going to adopt these practices. They're really easy to do. I'm going to let people know, and we'll show you how. Or maybe eventually you want to then say, I'm going to start really helping others do the same, kind of being an ambassador, if you look at it that way. And we call that being a lake steward. So this is the kind of the basic structure of these programs. And the most important part, if you want to move on, Elena, is that it's not just Seneca Lake, Keuka Lake. It's many Finger Lakes are all adopting these lake-friendly programs and creating ways to reach out to residents and give them materials, giving them workshops like the one tonight. We're working together because they're all the same practices. They're promoted by the DEC, they're deep EPA. They're not rocket science. The key thing is that people understand them and know how to implement them. So what you're seeing here is just a quick snapshot of all of the lake-friendly living programs throughout the Finger Lakes that are working together. You can even see our common logo, and we're really excited about this because these logos are very eye-catching. They're almost like an icon. And you know, imagine if this was across the Finger Lakes, how from a grassroots standpoint, the generation of interest and adoption that we can drive. So what you're seeing here is Seneca Lake Pure Waters Association. We're bringing you this workshop tonight, but obviously working with Ontario and Seneca County. We have the Keuka Lake Watershed Network. We have Canandaigua Lake Association, Keuka Lake Association, Owasco Lake Association, and Skaneateles. And we're hoping to, we've already talked to the other lakes, and we're hoping to bring them on board, and they're all very interested. So there's definitely a power of the Finger Lakes around these residential aimed programs. So I'll close with the next slide, Elena, if you would. We want to show you that we don't expect you to say it's easy, go forth and do it. We want to give you lots of resources. Tonight's an example of a workshop, very focused on one element, a rain barrel installation, but Elena's going to talk to you a little about a few other practices you can adopt. But the great thing is, once you have this workshop tonight, you can go to multiple websites and download guides. You can access links to YouTube. You can see the pledge concept, which is a wonderful thing to post on your refrigerator and share with your family. You can put a sign in your yard to show I am supporting lake-friendly living, which has been a really wonderful conversation starter with neighbors and helping to understand what that means. I do have the senecalake.org lake-friendly living website, but I just want to show that as one example. And what Elena sent out to you today in the PDF was all of the different lakes and their lake-friendly living websites. So it doesn't matter where you live, it's a matter of what you want to access and do. So I just encourage you to look through, if you're from one of the different watersheds, then go to their watershed website. That's perfectly fine. But if you want to check them all out and just see the different resources, they're all very similar, but yeah, they're a little different. But it's just an abundance of material. And of course, the most important part is to reach out and connect with us as well. We love to have input and questions and learn more. And that's part of bringing you more workshops like tonight. So I'll end with that, Elena, and we're happy to take questions about lake-friendly living at the end, but it's really exciting now to move right into what you're here to learn about tonight, which is rain barrel installation and how you can be part of lake-friendly living in that respect.
Great. Well, thanks, Maura. For those of you just coming in, my name is Elena Robarge. I work for Ontario County Soil and Water Conservation District. You may have already picked up your rain barrel, or you're scheduling a time with me or Seneca County Soil and Water to go pick up your barrel. You may also just be calling in for information. We always do have barrels available, so I know a few of you here might be on a waiting list for the $50 rain barrels that we're selling. So I'm just overjoyed with all the interest that we got for this program. And again, made possible by Seneca Lake Pure Waters Association and Seneca County Soil and Water. So before we get to the rain barrel, I want to talk a little bit about how the healthy lawns in our watersheds have a huge impact on having a healthy lake. So it's a direct correlation. It's so important to know that the water that leaves your property is eventually getting to a bigger body of water. So Maura talked a lot about like what a watershed is, right? So that word we use all the time, it's really important to understand that that's the land that drains to the lowest point in the landscape where water collects. Everyone lives in a watershed, so no matter where you live, that great map that she showed, you may live in multiple near the Finger Lakes, right, in one of those watersheds. You may live in one of the Genesee River watershed. There's so many different watersheds in our area. So water is going someplace all the time, and that also includes groundwater. We often don't think of groundwater as part of our watershed, but groundwater doesn't just stay as groundwater. It can move to be surface water. It's constantly moving. Sometimes the slides are a little delayed when I click the button, so bear with me if I start talking about a next slide and you can't see it yet, but only rain down the drain. That's kind of a concept we always try to promote. It's that the land use in a watershed really determines that water quality in all our streams, our wetlands, our lakes, our groundwater. It has a huge impact. So you often hear this word stormwater. Okay, so it's pretty, what you think about it is like your water from a storm, right? It's the runoff that occurs over our land, our roads, parking lots, other surfaces during and after rain, also when our snow is melting in the spring. But as that water goes across those surfaces, it can pick up dirt and pollutants that can really harm our water quality. You may think about a parking lot at a grocery store. It may have some trash, debris, oil spilling, dirty water, puddles, mud. Think of all the things that might be in a parking lot. And when we have a big rain event, all of that debris, all of those harmful pollutants are picked up in the water. It's raining and it goes into our waterways. So we want to think about our house as having, or our home having a huge impact on our waterways as well. So some poor examples that would really affect our waterways would be maybe a poorly maintained construction site with a lot of soil leaving the site. To the left, there's a picture of a silt fence that's not functioning at all, right? All that water is going right below it. So stormwater best management practices on construction sites are so important to keep soil and debris out of our waterways. You often think about, your lawn clippings, all your leaves. You really want to keep that away from any storm drains or any waterways, oil, all of that stuff. We really want to keep out of our water. Also, we often don't think about our septic systems. People who live on the lake may think about their septic systems a little bit more because it's right there. But no matter where you are in the watershed, having a well-functioning septic system is so important to keep our groundwater safe. We have a septic system inspection program out of our office, and it's amazing the horror stories I could tell you about septic systems being drained right into the roadside ditch, things not being hooked up the way they're supposed to. So it's really important to think about how at your home, how are you affecting the waterways, and hopefully it's all in positive ways. So our world is constantly changing, right? Which is great. It's great for our economy. We have more parking lots and more roadways, more houses being built. But we have to think about where was that water going before? Was it running into a hayfield where it absorbed into the ground? Was it coming through a forest? So our world is changing, right? We're getting more impervious surfaces that water can't go through. So where is that water gonna go? If anything, we're getting more water. So we really have to think about what we're gonna do for the future so our water isn't being polluted and going into our waterways with dirt and debris within it. So at Soil and Water, we do a lot of green infrastructure projects. And our goals are always to decrease impervious surfaces, slow down stormwater, and allow for infiltration. And this is things that you can do at home. Some examples of projects that we did, in the top left, you'll see some porous pavement. This is actually at Finger Lakes Community College. This is a little bit pricier than your normal pavement, but it does allow for water to infiltrate through some of the water. Down at the bottom, that's a large rain garden that's installed actually just to the right of this porous pavement. That's take a lot of the water that's running off of CMAQ. If you've ever been to one of the shows at CMAQ, that's a pretty big hill. But a rain garden is an excellent opportunity that you could even do on a small scale to allow for infiltration, use plants and all those soil amendments to actually absorb water like a sponge. So that's kind of a cool project. On the top right, that's a sediment trap. If anyone lives near Honeoye, or if you're ever going down County Road 36, we have several of these installed that we worked with Ontario County Highway Department. And as the water comes through the roadside ditch, the water kind of sits there in this cement trap. There's two small holes at the bottom where then the water can flow through, leaving behind any sediment and debris that can be easily cleaned out with a ditching bucket. So that's a really cool project that's keeping a lot of sediment out of Honeoye Lake. So practicing healthy lawn care is super important, and that's something you can do yourself to make a positive impact. A healthy lawn can filter, purify, and reduce stormwater runoff. Managing your lawn without endangering water quality or creating health threats, it's possible and it's very cost effective. And often you do really save a lot of money. So that cost effective thing should be a great incentive to have a healthy lawn. So when it comes to using fertilizer, so you want to add nutrients to your lawn, it's really important to test before you treat. So Cornell University did a survey indicating that 1 in 10 lawns actually needs fertilizing. So doing a simple soil test every few years through Cornell University, it's not that expensive. Some of them are like $20 or $30, sometimes less. Just figuring out what your soil needs, right? What does your lawn actually need? Because it can only use as many nutrients as it needs. So anything excess that you're pouring on your lawn is just going to get washed away with the next rainstorm. So that's a real thing. We're dealing with that all over our watersheds, is having too much nutrients going into our lakes. So you really want to be the solution to that. So make sure that you're fertilizing responsibly. If you do need fertilizer, your soil test comes back, you do need fertilizer. If it is necessary, apply in late May to early June or late August to early September. And try to use fertilizers with slow release nitrogen, zero phosphorus if possible. Follow all label directions and safety precautions, of course. What's a kind of a crazy thing to think about, 1 pound of phosphorus in the lake can spur the growth of 500 pounds of aquatic plants. So really think about that. 1 pound of phosphorus might not seem like a lot when you go buy your fertilizer or someone's applying it for you, but 1 pound of phosphorus can do a lot of damage. And looking for this label, hopefully you'll be able to see in just a moment. There you go. Nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, NPK. Whenever you're purchasing fertilizer, that's always going to be the order of nutrients. So nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium. So you want to make sure that middle number is 0 whenever possible. Making sure you're checking the weather and your local laws if you're going to be applying anything to your lawn. So don't apply fertilizer or other chemicals if we're going to have a rainstorm. It's just going to wash off. And don't let fertilizer or chemicals fall on your sidewalks. Of course, any impervious surface, it's just going to wash away with water. So maybe you have a pest and you're looking to use, a pesticide, herbicide, insecticide. Always talk to an expert. Cornell Cooperative Extension, you have one in each of your counties, no matter where you are in New York State. So they have excellent staff to help you identify what you have, what kind of issue you have, whether it's a beetle. Try to figure out what it is it something you can live with, and how can I control it before just going right towards a chemical. Sometimes there's non-chemical alternatives such as manual removal, integrated pest management. Cornell University has a huge integrated pest management department that they have a website and everything that you can learn more about. Looking at your yard, looking at your garden, whatever your area is that you're dealing with, looking at it often, catching those nasty little pests early is going to be your best bet. So really think about talking with the experts before using chemicals on your property. And of course, safety directions, that's always important. And not all bugs are bad. So you see a bunch of bugs, figure out if it's something that might be beneficial. So improper use of pesticides, of course, can result in contamination of lakes and our streams, cause environmental damage, and we often think that's our drinking water. So what are we putting in our waterways? One really important thing is to think about your lawn. Are you promoting dense, healthy growth? So if you're, picking out a grass seed, or you need to seed more parts of your lawn, try to plant something that's disease resistant. Cut grass no less than 3 inches in height. Keeping your mower blade sharp, it seems silly, but it's actually a great way to keep a healthy lawn, because shredding your grass blade tips, with a dull mower blades actually invites disease in. Leaving clippings on your lawn for natural fertilizer. At our office, we're always recommending to people, keep those rakes in your shed. You can just mow over your leaves a few times in the fall, mulch them up into smaller pieces, and that's what I do at my home, and it provides a great green lawn for the next year. It's a natural fertilizer, and you save a lot of money and a lot of time. Another good tip, just to promote a healthy lawn, or even if it's your garden, watering early in the morning, not in the evening. There's a lot of reasons for that, including preventing mold, mildew, and it's just so much better if you water early. Just as a reminder, just some housekeeping things. If everyone can mute their phone or tablet, that would be great. And this is being recorded for later viewing. Okay, moving on. Rain garden. So I kind of mentioned this before. This helps increase infiltration of runoff water from your roof or driveway. It doesn't have to be a big project. It can be a really small rain garden. Talk to your local landscaped source, whatever it is, maybe a local flower shop. So wherever you would get your soil, and talk to them about what maybe some soil amendments you may need to bring in. If you have a lot of clay, you're not going to be able to have a good rain garden. You're usually going to have to bring in some soil amendments so that it's really acting as a really good sponge in your yard for all that storm water. You can direct your downspouts to it. It's going to filter your nutrients from the water. Those plants, you want to pick species that like to have wet feet so they can handle, some standing water for up to a day. You always want to pick native plants. A rain garden is a really cool way to manage water on your property. It's kind of an example of what the layout. Sometimes you want to have additional drainage in case you did have a big storm, so that any extra water can flow out of it. But they're a beautiful thing to create for your lawn. You want to promote birds and pollinator species. It's a great habitat for them. But you want to use perennials too, so it's less frequent care after establishment. You won't need any pesticides or fertilizers, and of course, native plants always. Okay, so moving on to something we usually don't want to talk about, and that's pet waste. Cleaning up after your pets is so important. So animal feces contain nutrients, bacteria, parasites, all kinds of nasty stuff that contaminate the lake. They often have twice the amount of bacteria and pathogens than human waste, and we wouldn't want human waste into our waterways. So keeping pet waste out of there is so important. It's not always the fun job, but we do want to keep our best friends. Keeping all of their waste cleaned up is so important. And then we talked a little bit about septic systems earlier, but it is important that septic tanks should be pumped every 3 to 5 years to remove sludge that will not decompose. A lot of you probably, and most people don't do it every 3 to 5 years, but actually to keep your system as healthy and working properly as long as possible, pumping it every 3 to 5 years is highly recommended. New York State Department of Health estimates a life of about 30 years for a properly maintained on-site wastewater system. Another thing, just to save a little bit of money, they really don't recommend buying septic tank additives. Oftentimes, it could potentially break down stuff that shouldn't be broken down and entering our groundwater. So that's something to think about. And they haven't been proven to reduce or eliminate for pumping. So you still want to pump regularly, that 3 to 5 years. So moving on to rain barrel. So some of you may already have your rain barrel. You may be scheduling a time to pick it up in the near future, or you're going to be building one yourself. But these are awesome. This is a great way to collect and store rainwater from your roof that would otherwise be lost to runoff and diverted to storm drains or streams. It's really going to minimize your runoff of pollutants into our waterways, conserve treated drinking water, save a bunch of money for you so you're not using, whether it's public water or well water, you really want to conserve your use of water. And it's just a great way to manage that water that's running off of your roof and putting it towards a second use, such as watering your garden or lawn, topping off your swimming pool, cleaning sidewalks, cleaning outdoor furniture, and the list goes on. I use mine all the time, and hopefully you will enjoy using yours as well. There are so many different places you could put it. I'll show a video in just a little bit about setting one up, but we have so many impervious surfaces on our homes, right? We have maybe a house, barn, shed, maybe some sidewalks, or even a paved driveway. These are all impervious surfaces. So using the water that's rushing off of your roof is a great start for our waterways. This is just a little calculation, you'll see it in just a moment, of a roof that's 50 foot by 20 foot, which would be 1,000 square feet. In a 1-inch rain event, 620 gallons of water is generated. So that's a little mind-boggling to think about that much water. So it's amazing how fast your barrel will fill up and how much water you're really saving. And it's so much less water that's leaving your property. So these barrels are just 55 gallons. I did a little research, and it said in Canandaigua, New York, which is where my office is, the average annual rainfall is about 34 inches. So think about that in that previous calculation, a 1-inch rain event. So that's a lot of rainwater I could be potentially using. So one thing is I want to talk a little bit about where these barrels came from. So these are 55-gallon food grade barrels. These are actually put to a second use, which is an awesome way to recycle. So Constellation Brands was very interested in becoming involved in a water conservation project like this. So they are our amazing partners that provide these plastic barrels for free. I go and pick them up with my coworkers, I drill them, and then I build them. And it's amazing because it's a huge cost saver. Often these barrels cost a lot of money, especially brand new. And what better than to recycle it and put it to a second use? They're actually used for some of their flavoring for their Arbor Mist wine. So if you have your barrel already, I've washed it out, but it may smell like strawberry or peach or mango, things like that. So kind of fun, but it's awesome that you're involved in a recycling process as well. So one thing I do want to point out is you want to think about what's on your roof. So when you're using the water out of your rain barrel, this isn't for drinking water. It's probably not for water for your animals to drink either. You have to think about the squirrels up there. You want to think about the tar that may be coming out of some of your tiles, a lot of birds up there, a lot of, algae growth, different things. So all of that water is rushing off your roof and can be picking up some things that you wouldn't want to be drinking, or maybe your dog wouldn't want to be drinking. When it comes to maybe your vegetable garden, Try not to spray directly on your tomato. Maybe use the water more towards your roots so you're not getting it on something that you're going to be eating. Just so you know, it's something to think about and be aware of. So I'll show you some of the tools and parts that I use to actually build your barrel. In a normal year, we would have a workshop where I drill it, I provide the barrel, and then we work together to build it ourselves. But in a year like this, you're very fortunate. It's all built for you. But sometimes you may have a barrel at home and you wanna build another. So I'm more than willing to share some of the information. So we've got some hole saw bits that I use to drill your barrels and our nice drill. Actually, to get your bulkhead down at the bottom with the spigot, I actually use duct tape and a yardstick, believe it or not. So this is your bulkhead and spigot. There should be some plumber's tape on there as well. You've got a 1.5 inch PVC coupling on the side for your overflow, and then your inlet at the top. And that screen's great for keeping mosquitoes and any leaf debris out. You'll see that in just a moment. Okay. So setting up your barrel, I want to talk a little bit that you do want to lift it up off the ground. I use some pavers. These are some examples of maybe some concrete blocks or even like a little wooden table to get it up off the ground. And I'll talk about this in the video in just a moment, but just a couple different ways to visually see how people have set up their barrel. Most people just modify their gutter so it's right above the inlet. You can also purchase, sometimes they're a little pricier, but at the, Home Depot or Lowe's, you can get a diverter so your pipe can your gutter can continue down to the ground, but this kind of diverts it off to the side. So some of the water goes in your rain barrel. Some people even connect multiple barrels through the overflow on the side with some PVC. A little bit about winter care. You do want these barrels to last as long as possible. So when it comes to, that mid-fall in New York State, we get a nice freeze, usually long before we think we will. So it is important, take down your barrel, drain it, clean it, right? You may have some algae growth that's built up over the summer. I recommend storing it inside if possible. If not, try to cover it, but maybe even put it upside down so that that water isn't potentially getting in there and freezing inside your spigot and bulkhead. That's probably the most expensive part on the barrel. So you would want to keep everything lasting as long as possible. And so you're keeping water out of it. Here we've got some really cool ideas. I stole these off the internet, so just ideas from all over the place on ways you can potentially paint your barrel or put things around it to make it look a little bit better. Some people like the blue, some people would prefer it to kind of blend into their garden a little bit or stand out with some bright neon colors. So these are just some ideas. If you go on Pinterest or Google, there are so many cool ways that you can decorate your barrel to make it your own. I did include some painting tips. This is a barrel that one of the master gardeners from Cornell Cooperative Extension of Ontario County actually painted for us this year, which is awesome. Hopefully I'll be using this barrel. The one here has got some clouds and water. I'll use them at future workshops when we're in person. But I think she sanded it a little bit too, just to help so that everything dried correctly and nothing peeled off. But she did a base coat of Krylon Fusion spray paint, then detail paint with patio paint acrylic, and then a top coat seal with clear gloss Krylon Fusion spray paint. Those are just some of the things that she did. I'm sure there's multiple ways you could paint, but these ones I think she found, between Walmart, local hardware store, maybe even Michael's for some things, or Joann Fabrics. But those are some cool tips on if you want to paint your barrel at home. So I'm going to include this video. This is just setting up the barrel. This is me at home. Okay, so you have your rain barrel at home. The first step would be picking a location. I have mine on one of our sheds. You can put it on your house, your barn. My shed fills up my barrel very quickly, so you may find that you're going to want more of these in the future. I also like to put it near a garden that I'm going to be watering a lot to make it convenient for myself. You're also going to want to lift it up off the ground. The higher it is, actually the better water pressure you'll get. I use some pavers. You can use some concrete blocks, bricks. Anything will work to get the rain barrel off of the ground. Down here you have a 3/4 inch bulkhead with a basic spigot. You can either attach a hose to this or just fill up your watering can or bucket. Up top, we've modified the gutters to be right above the inlet. This inlet can actually come right out. It's got some screen on it to keep the leaf debris from getting in your barrel and clogging up your spigot. But the most important thing is you really want to keep mosquitoes out of your barrel. So this netting will really help with that. But you should clean that off regularly. Over here, we have your overflow. What's important about this is rather than the water rushing off the top when these fill up, because they do fill up pretty quickly, your overflow is here so we can divert that rainwater away. The first step is figuring out what you want to do to divert it. I have a 1.5 inch 90-degree piece of PVC, a basic coupling that I've just attached. I went and bought this at my local hardware store. So you just kind of put that into your overflow. And then I have just a basic straight pipe of PVC that I've attached, and I kind of divert it away from my foundation. You really don't want rainwater collecting and pooling at your foundation, especially if it's on your house or barn, right? You really don't want to cause damage in the long run. Another option, this is just a basic PVC reducer. It's a 1.5 inch by 1/2 inch, along with a hose adapter. So you could also put this in your overflow and then attach a hose and have that going towards a garden. There's so many different ways, but this is a way you can personalize it, and this is only going to cost you a few dollars. Personally, I like to have a little attachment. This is just from like an RV hookup. And I attach this to my spigot. And that way I can actually have the rainwater flowing into my watering can while I'm out watering somewhere else with my bucket, and then I can just have it filling up without having to hold it there. Just some nice tricks to learn when you have your rain barrel. So hopefully you've set it up, and if you have any questions, reach out to me anytime. Thanks. Our website, ontswcd.com, where I have more tips on managing your stormwater, as well as forestry programs, ag programs. We have lots of different programs at our office that you may be interested in, even some backyard conservation programs. So I will open it up for questions. If anyone would like to ask a question, or if they want to use the chat feature, and if Maura, if you had any questions you wanted to add.
Yeah, before we move into Q&A, which is definitely the critical time, the next 20 minutes, we just want to emphasize this is just the beginning, and this is just one thing you can do, but I think you also heard some other great opportunities for things you can do around your home that can make a difference for the protection of our lakes. And it doesn't matter where you live. As you can see, water runs everywhere, and eventually whatever it's carrying gets into the lake, and that affects our lakes. So we appreciate you taking this big step with a rain barrel. I will also just emphasize from a personal standpoint, it's a lot of fun, and I would ask that, or suggest that bring your family into it or your friends. I mean, just setting it up, it's not hard, but it is a process, and make it a fun process, because it can be like people want to think about, what does that mean? Where should I put it? How do we do this? And talk about it. And it really is a very engaging process. If you have kids or if you have neighbors, include people. But otherwise, the one thing we can say is what we're all doing as being lake friendly, no matter where you live, is to be aware and to be active. So one of the things you can do is take the pledge. The websites that we sent out to you all have pledge, places to go. So Seneca Lake Pure Waters has a pledge card, has a pledge activity. The more you support online, and we can showcase that and use a sign in your yard, we are showing people what we support. And that's a really exciting way, in a very simple way, about supporting nature and supporting our lakes. So we appreciate you joining tonight. And if you want to learn more, you'll get all these materials to learn lots more. And we always encourage input and ideas, and definitely engagement. We're looking for support and action and volunteers in any way possible. So thank you for all being here tonight. So Elena, how do you want to do Q&A? You know how to work this with your, you've got a few questions up there now. I'll let you navigate that.
It looks like Ralph had a question about how you could possibly connect multiple barrels. Now, some people will put barrels at different parts of their house, but connecting them, there are so many different ways. So one way to do it would be the overflow on the side. That is a 1.5-inch piece of PVC, a small reducer that goes into the side. You could actually connect each barrel by their overflow. So you could do just a straight piece of PVC. I believe, I'll try to go back a little bit, and you'll eventually be able to see this slide. But in this top left corner, once it loads, you'll see how someone put the overflow, they actually connect it with just a piece of PVC, like a straight piece. Some people could do a hose. Those are the ways I know you could do our barrels, but there's other people that have built their own systems where they actually put barrels on their sides and kind of stack them up. But there are multiple ways. And then, well, thank you, Stephen. Excellent presentation by both Laura and myself. I appreciate that. We appreciate the good feedback. And if anyone else, if you want to ask any questions, feel free to unmute yourself at any time. We'll take them as they come. Also, another question was, how much are extra barrels? So Ontario County Soil and Water, we sell barrels all year round for $50. They were reduced for $40 because of the generous sponsorship by Seneca Lake Pure Waters and Seneca County Soil and Water. So I do have $50 barrels available. It might be a couple weeks. I can put you on a waiting list so I can get those built for you, but those would be $50, and that would be from our office in Ontario County.
And I would add, you know, COVID has been such a strange influence on all of us. But Elena, thank you. Because of COVID, we didn't stop doing these types of outreach. Instead, Elena took on the effort and actually built them. Normally, people would be going on site and building them themselves. And those of you who have a rain barrel can understand what's involved, right? There's lots of drilling and, you know, and plumbing and hardware, obviously. So these rain barrels, like if there are more that you want, and if you haven't picked yours up yet, please like do it and get it installed, because you're in a really good position to use them. But we will do more, and hopefully the fun part about doing more of these workshops live is that there is engagement and people can interact together, and we miss that part. So for now, you get the benefit of a fully complete rain barrel without any frustration of doing it yourself. But hopefully we'll get together and be able to interact more about what we're doing to help protect the lakes.
Great. And once again, everyone probably received my email, so that's how you're on this webinar tonight. And so if you have any questions, I think my signature had my cell phone in it as well, but feel free to call me, text me, email me, any questions you may have in the future, even if it's next year and you have a question on your rain barrel or where to get a spare part because something broke or something, just let me know. And we are very thankful for Constellation Brands for being so generous with these barrels. If you've done any research at all on trying to find a barrel, they're often very hard to come by and also pretty expensive even for used barrels. So that donation from them is awesome. I'm so glad. I know I see someone said they were so surprised they were assembled. So that was definitely a new thing for this year for them to all come together. Definitely took a lot of work on my end, as well as some of my coworkers were awesome to help me. But yeah, I'm so glad you guys are enjoying your barrel. If you haven't gotten it yet, just contact me and we'll schedule a time. But yeah, I think that's it for me. If anyone has any questions. Looks like that is all for questions. So thank you everyone for attending tonight. Once again, this will be recorded and shared on multiple websites, and I can email that out as well. And yeah, thank you guys so much. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Elena.
Yeah,
Wonderful.
thank you, Maura.
Thank you.
You're welcome.